Hi, and welcome back to Mom in Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. On this episode, I'm very excited to be speaking with Emily Harrington. She is one of the most successful and versatile professional climbers in the world. She's a 5-time U.S. national champion and has competed numerous first female ascents, summited Mount Everest, and made a complete ski descent of Cho Oyu, the world's 6th tallest peak. She made history when she became the first woman to free climb Golden Gate on El Capitan under 24 hours. And on this episode, we are talking about the things she experienced of being an elite athlete while also considering motherhood and becoming a mother. There are so many fascinating parts of her story in general, but also things that I think a lot of people can relate to, even if you're not an elite athlete or a climber. There are themes that, take place in motherhood, but certainly some of them are unique for the challenges of being an elite athlete and figuring out motherhood and balancing that. And we talk about a lot of things like failure, perfectionism, pressures in motherhood, and some of her experiences through pregnancy and postpartum. And we talk about breastfeeding and getting back into climbing condition and just so much more. It's a beautiful conversation. I'm really grateful that she took the time to share her story because, for one, I think it is just beautiful to be able to talk to somebody who's in a very male-dominated sport and to hear the amount of success she has and the amount of work she's put into it, as well as just how that intersects with motherhood. I think there are quite a few people out there who, on some level, can identify with some of the struggles that Emily faced, but also for people out there who are elite athletes and who are navigating this transition or considering it. It's really important to have folks in the public eye talking about this so that they can know, what's possible for them, or at least open up possibilities if they haven't yet considered it. And Emily continues to be very active in the climbing world, amongst many other things. She currently resides in Tahoe City, California, where she spends her time training, climbing, and skiing with her husband, Adrian Ballinger, and their toddler and their rescuer dog, Cat. And now Girl Climber is screening at IMAX theaters and various cinemas through the end of the year. It goes to Jolt on October 15th and full streaming in November. And now I welcome you into this great conversation with Emily. Welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I am excited too. It's not often I get to have a conversation like we're about to have, where we're talking about your experience of being an elite athlete and considering motherhood and going through the process of that and what that's like. But I know there's at least a handful of people who go through that too. And I'm really excited to be able to share your experience so other people can feel seen and heard and maybe resonate with what you went through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely feels a bit new. It feels like there's not that many stories told about women who have been elite athletes and hoping to continue their career past motherhood. When I was coming up in my early 20s, I sort of just thought that everything would just stop and I would just like become a mom and that would be it. So it's been a cool transition and hopefully something that continues for women.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially if you didn't have a lot of examples yourself to see that that was a possibility that you could do both.
Yeah, exactly. I think 10 or 15 years ago, it was really unique. And now I did have a few examples, but they were very few. And I think they sort of had a hard time, honestly, continuing their careers. They had to fight a lot. And so, I'm grateful to have had a few mentors. And then I'm also grateful to have a lot of peers right now to kind of be going through it with other women together.
Right. Yeah, that's really awesome. I imagine that feeling that you had, well, potentially anyways, of not being sure if you'd be able to continue this was also because of what other people were telling you. Like, not necessarily other moms who'd been able to do it, but other people's assumptions about what you could or couldn't do as a mom.
Yeah, it is kind of funny actually, because even now I tell my story and my film just came out and the achievement happened before I had a kid. And people often come up to me and they're like, "Oh, so you're still climbing?"
Mm,
And I'm like, "Yeah. Like what what else would I be doing?"
right.
It's like they're so surprised.
Yeah, I mean, the pressures, in general on new moms to all of a sudden be this sort of like give up your entire self in order to be a mother is pretty wild. Like all of a sudden you're supposed to not do what you love. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's just an interesting thing that there's still that perception. And I think it's because what I do is so niche and maybe
Mm.
quite misunderstood, I think, in the mainstream. I think people don't quite understand what it is that I do and how I do it and how it kind of fits into being a mom and having a relatively more normal life. So I think there's just some misunderstanding as well as that like assumption that you just kind of shift jobs and you like become a mom and now that's your job, which it is to an extent, but I have a lot of other things going on as well.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when having watched the film, by the way, it's beautiful and amazing and inspiring and all of the things. I'm excited for everybody to see it. You started on your path at a pretty young age, I think, and just in terms of climbing and getting to the kind of ranks that you did to it, it started really young.
Yeah, so I was 10 years old when I started climbing. I started climbing in a climbing gym, like a lot of kids start now. Actually,
Mhm.
now 10 is honestly pretty late
Is
to
it?
start.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Wow. Okay.
Most kids start very young now because climbing gyms are just so popular. It's
Mhm.
it's definitely a very fast growing sport. But yeah, when I was younger, it was relatively niche. But I grew up in Colorado, which is a in Boulder, Colorado, which is a very like mountain focused outdoor
Sure.
town. And I was lucky enough to discover climbing at a really young age and sort of yeah, dive into it as a full-time passion from then on.
Right. And you just sort of felt it in your bones, like this is what you were meant to do.
Yeah, it was a cool I actually still remember the feeling when I first climbed. And it was really interesting because I was super drawn to the idea of like solving the puzzle and kind of
Yeah.
figuring out my own way up the wall. I did come from a gymnastics background, so I had a lot of upper body strength and body awareness and flexibility. And so I was actually like quite good at it to
Mhm.
start, which that didn't hurt that I felt like I was good at it.
Yeah.
But then I remember this feeling of like I felt the exposure and like the air under my feet and I was like afraid, but I kept climbing and I got to the top and I came down and I just remember I felt so empowered by that process of working through that fear
Mhm.
even as like a little girl, and I just
Mhm.
really wanted to keep exploring that, I think is what it was.
That's really cool. And kind of a gift to be able to have that feeling at such a young age. It's
Yeah,
rare
I
it's
feel
rare to know what you wanna do forever at that age.
Yeah, I feel really lucky that I was able to kind of discover that and my parents supported it and yeah, and here I am today. So,
Wow, and how far you've come. It's a I mean, I don't know if, at that age you envisioned any of what you've been able to do and where you're at now, or if it just feels like this is a natural progression of like where you started.
yeah, a bit. I mean, I think a bit both are true. I don't think I ever envisioned I would be able to make a full-time career out of it, but at the same time I was really convinced that I was a climber and this is what I was going to be and this is what I was going to do and this is
Mhm.
what I loved doing. The career side of it definitely sort of evolved as I got a bit older and sort of realized that there was so much more to climbing outside of just winning climbing competitions, which is what I originally was doing. Yeah, and then it just sort of happened after I graduated from college. I joined the North Face team, which they have a very like well-established athlete team, and I was lucky enough to have a lot of mentors who kind of showed me a different side of climbing, much different, like more diverse side of climbing, more mountain focused, more adventure focused. I started going on expeditions And I sort of realized what climbing could be outside of this very small niche of winning competitions.
Mhm. And in that, I mean, I guess it kind of touching on the idea of motherhood throughout that process. When do you remember when it was first like a thought that maybe you would want to have a kid while you were still in this process of all these expeditions and climbing?
I always assumed that I would have a kid. I think it was just in my brain of like, oh, this is what you do. You like
Okay.
grow up and then you get married and then you have a kid. I just,
Mhm.
that was
Mhm.
what I thought. I was never like one of those people that was like super drawn to motherhood. It wasn't, I don't think I felt like very like connected to children early on in my life. But I think, and I also think when I first started out as a professional climber in my early 20s, I did not think that I would be able to continue it after having a kid because I didn't have any good examples
Right.
of women who did it. And it didn't feel like something that would last. Like I didn't think I could maintain relevancy into motherhood. What changed is actually I met this woman who became like a very important friend and mentor to me, Hillary Nelson.
Mhm.
And I met her when I went and climbed Everest in 2012. And she actually was a mother of two boys already. When she was on that expedition, she was a very prominent figure in the ski mountaineering community, just super well established, incredibly talented, had a lot of grit. And yeah, when I met her, I remember I actually met her before I went to Mount Everest, and we were on like a North Face like weekend trip, and she had her newborn son with her and at the airport and was kind of juggling and dealing. And I just remember looking at her and being like, oh my gosh, she's on the North Face team and she has two kids and she's still doing all these things. And it was like a light bulb went on. I was like, oh wow, like you can keep going. That's amazing. And then I went on a bunch of trips with her after that. We became like very, very close friends. And she was just like such an important mentor for me in my life. And she's really the one that kind of showed me that it was possible past, motherhood and
Mhm.
through all these life transitions that I could continue to have a career. And that's when she was really, one of my main examples.
It's amazing that you had that, and I'm sure are now that for other people as well. Like you said, it's growing. There's a small group of people who are able to do this, but it sometimes just takes that one or two people to spark the idea, which I think in part of your process, the idea of even doing LCAP was kind of, there was some encouragement that came to you that you could do it.
Yeah, I think the process on LCAP was very long and drawn out. I think I was originally drawn to it when I first moved to California, and I kind of had just climbed Mount Everest and was branching out in terms of my climbing styles, in terms of how my relationship to climbing was changing a lot as I grew older. And I moved to California when I met my, now husband, and we started going to Yosemite and climbing there. And I was really drawn to El Cap because it kind of combined my roots, like technical hard climbing that I did when I was a kid in the gym, with this more like adventure side, which is what I had been kind of drawn to more recently with climbing Mount Everest and going on expeditions. I saw it as this like really kind of perfect combination and really good challenge for where I was at. And yeah, I ended up kind of dedicating almost a decade to, or no, not quite a decade, like 7 years to trying to complete this route in under 24 hours, and had a lot of inspiration along the way, a lot of mentors, a lot of struggle, a lot of failure. Um, but ultimately ended up being successful.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like tearing up. It was so cool. That was really, really cool. At the time when you were first considering LCAP, had you already thought to yourself, I need to do this before I become a mom?
Yeah, I think in my head it was something that required so much sacrifice and so much time and so much energy. And I kind of was I was pretty realistic that it would be a lot easier to accomplish this goal in the place that I was at then versus after having a kid and going through all of that. I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible,
Mm,
but I knew that it was the right time for me to kind of complete this goal. And my husband and I were in a good place to kind of pour everything we had into our goals and then
yeah.
consider having a family. Because even though I really didn't want things to change, I think in the back of my mind, I knew that, like, of course, things were going to change a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just how it is, and that's the choice that you make when you decide to have a family. Like,
Right.
then you have different priorities, and you have to put your energy into it, and so you just don't have as much to give to other things.
Right. Right. For sure. So, how kind of soon after you accomplished your goal was it more of a reality to think about having a child?
Yeah, pretty soon after I climbed that route in 2020, November of 2020. And then we were married the following year and we got pregnant in early 2022. So yeah, it was definitely like, I'm the kind of person that's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and then I have a plan and I'm going to try to do this thing. And obviously things don't always work out that way, but
Mhm.
we were at least moving towards that.
Okay. Right. So, if I can ask a little bit about what that process was like for you, just becoming pregnant, and I assume at that point trying to figure out how am I going to do both? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard and scary, honestly. I was super, it was kind of like I didn't feel ready, but I also knew that there was never a time where I was going to feel totally ready.
Sure.
And life doesn't stop, and there's always going to be things coming up. And so it wasn't something that I wanted to keep putting off. I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, like we were both kind of in a place where we kind of agreed that this was the right time, even though it didn't feel like, I just don't think you ever completely like in the perfect place to make huge life changes. So
Right. Right.
we just kind of like committed, and then I got pregnant and I definitely had like a moment of, oh my god, what have we done?
Hmm.
Like do we really want to do this? Is this going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? Are we going to still get to do what we want to do? Am I going to be happy? Am I even going to like be a good mom? Like I didn't even know. I just didn't relate to children very well, as I said. Like I didn't know how to talk
Yeah.
to them. I just like didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was natural at it. So I was definitely had like all the feelings. But I had a great partner. Adrian and I do really well as a team, and I did feel really supported. And I did have a lot of friends who were kind of going through it alongside myself, and that was honestly so helpful just to have
Mm.
other people to kind of be going through it together with.
Yeah. For
but
sure.
but yeah, it was hard. I actually ended up going on an expedition like in my first trimester,
Mm.
a ski expedition to Baffin Island, which is like way up north in the Arctic Circle.
Oh, cool.
And I was, pregnant at the time. I was with Hillary, my friend,
Mm.
and it ended up being like the most amazing, like beautiful trip. One of the most memorable ones. I definitely like took it down a notch in terms of like the level of risk I wanted to take,
Mm. Sure.
but it was still just like this really like powerful, amazing experience for me.
Oh, that's great. So, were there, as far as I understand, that sounds pretty remote,
Yeah.
pretty out there. Did you have any concerns about being pregnant while you were, out there?
Yeah, I definitely had some concerns, but I had talked to my doctor. I had a little bit of like some complications with my pregnancy very early on. They thought it was a very rare form of an ectopic pregnancy called a cornule ectopic pregnancy. And so I was sort of like waiting to get that figured out before I committed to going on the trip. And then it turned out to like not be that. It was just kind of like looking like that. Maybe on the ultrasound, I went to a specialist. It was a little bit of like, it was a little stressful just because like I'd
Yeah.
never heard of anything like that before. And, it's just like a stressful time. It's so uncertain.
Hmm.
But as soon as that was kind of like cleared and my doctor was like, actually, everything's totally fine. You you're having a very normal pregnancy. Like, you're only in your first trimester. So, you know, everything it's going to be okay for you to go on a trip. And obviously we had like a lot of like plans in place for, we always do on trips like that, like in case
Sure.
something happens to anybody, like
Right.
what's the protocol for like a rescue, where's the closest hospital, all of those things we had like very much lined up. So yeah, I felt obviously some stress, but I also felt pretty confident about it. And I was with my friend Hillary, who just so happened to have gone on an expedition when she was in her first
Oh,
trimester.
really?
So she was very much like, I got you. It's
That's
gonna be okay.
that's really cool. Did that experience leave you with any anxiety or worry throughout pregnancy?
The initial experience with
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
it sort of improved after that because from my understanding, the like first trimester and those very first weeks were like kind of the most, where the most risk, there's the most risk in terms of miscarriage.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of like once I got through that, I just felt everything kept progressing pretty normally. And so I just felt pretty good. And I had a lot, I had the most anxiety at the beginning of my pregnancy. And then as things progressed, I just felt more and more confident that everything was going to, turn out okay. And it was like, that was really the only like big trip that I did. After that, I still was super active and climbing and skiing and all the things, but very like within my ability level.
How throughout the pregnancy, did you feel any shifts in your body that kind of made it hard to do what you would normally do, or that you had to reconcile? Like, how do I do this with, your center of balance is different and any of those things?
Yeah. I mean, obviously your body changes like dramatically when you're pregnant. So I was really prepared to kind of shift the way that I did things. But I had kind of had like a little bit of a training plan for like as I progressed through my pregnancy and how I would modify things. So I definitely like modified the way that I climbed. And obviously like I was sort of was forced to modify it because my body was changing and your center of gravity does change. And, I'm a runner as well, but then I kind of had to stop running because it was too painful. So I started like hiking and
Mm,
I just changed like the way I was doing my activities. And then also you're a bit more tired.
yeah.
So you tend to be doing less, or oftentimes like I would do something like my husband and I would go climbing and I'd be like, wow, that felt like we just did like so much. And he'd be like,
Well,
we didn't really, but like it's cool.
right, right. Wow, that's quite a shift.
Yeah, it was a shift, but it was like, I mean, I think after that initial trimester, I was pretty open minded and I had a lot of support and I felt like I was really welcoming to the experience. Like one of the reasons I've wanted to have a kid and wanted to like go through the process of motherhood is I was super curious about what pregnancy would be like.
Mm,
It just felt like this human experience that I've always wanted to have.
yeah.
So instead of sort of thinking of it like a burden
Mhm.
or something that would kind of hinder me, I really did think about it like it was coming from a place of curiosity, like what's it going to be like? What is childbirth going to be like? What's it going to be like to feel a baby inside? Like I really wanted to have those experiences. So I think like having to modify my activity level, I was really confident that I was able to like that I was going to be able to come back from all of it. So there was like a level of like curiosity and interest that I approached pregnancy with, and I think that was a pretty good perspective for me. Like it
Sure.
helped me a lot.
Yeah, I could see that definitely. Because I think, well, anyways, for some people that I meet with, that not necessarily as it relates to like being an elite athlete, but when they can't do what they've always been able to do for whatever reason, it can bring up like some feelings of almost grief, like a little bit of a
Yeah.
loss. So I wonder if that kind of curiosity feeling helped to stave some of that away.
Yeah, and I also think that the fact that I was able to keep doing the thing that I loved doing in a different way, but I was still able to go climbing. Like I could still move my body and in the way that in a way that was like relatively familiar. That just really helped me mentally. I think it would have been a different story if I had been told like, oh, actually, like your pregnancy is too high risk and you can't climb anymore,
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I think that would have been hard.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so like for sure those things helped you stay. I don't know if you felt positive, but it sounds like you were pretty positive throughout the process.
I felt really positive throughout my pregnancy, and I was like really excited most of the time. I think that the hardest part for me was like postpartum, like after having our son, and I really wanted to just get back to climbing the way that I knew that I used to or felt
Yeah.
like I could. And that was a slower process than I wanted it to be. And that's kind of where I struggled, I think. I didn't anticipate
Yeah.
like the process of breastfeeding, how much energy that would take, how like mentally taxing it would be, just with like you don't ever get to escape the like routine of it. And so I just found it to be so hard. And I was kind of like, nobody told me that this part would be hard. Like I wasn't ready for it. I think I'd really mentally prepared for pregnancy and birth. And then I wasn't as prepared for afterwards and kind of that recovery process.
Right. I find that not enough people are not warned, but told about what to expect afterwards. There's a lot more planning about birth and all that than there is about what's going to happen after the baby actually comes and that's like. And you can't, I mean, sure, you've been exhausted, but it's also a different kind of exhaustion to wake up every 2 hours or however often
Yeah.
you were up and uh, your, your, your body, your hormones, all of that are just going through something completely different.
Yeah. And I think I've maybe heard about it more now or talked about it more now, or I know about it. Maybe the algorithm knows about it and I'm on social media.
Right, right.
But before, I just wasn't totally ready. And I think that was just a bit hard for me. It took probably a whole other year to kind of feel like myself again.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I stopped breastfeeding that I was like, oh, wow, I just forgot what it was like to have energy.
Wow. So that one of the kind of hallmark changes is having your energy back.
Yeah, I stopped breastfeeding. And I think within a week, I was like, oh my gosh, like I had forgotten because I'd gone through a year of postpartum and essentially a year of like pregnancy. And so it had been like 2 full years since I really remembered what it felt like to just be me
Mm.
in my own body,
Mhm.
just me, like no one else relying on my body. So it was just an interesting shift. And I was just like, oh wow, like this is amazing.
Mm.
And that was the first time that I felt like I was kind of like back to who I was before, I guess.
So that was me as long as you could breastfeed, you did, or was it kind of like you were so exhausted that you had to make a decision or
No, I tried to breastfeed for a year. That was kind of my goal. And I think we made it to like 10 and a half months or something. And we in the first, I think we started supplementing with formula at like 3 months because our son wasn't gaining enough weight. And I also think maybe like I wasn't like I was being very active and climbing and doing all those things. So maybe that was affecting the milk supply or something. So we were supplementing with formula, but I was trying to breastfeed as much as I could. And then at like 10 or 10 and a half months, our son was kind of just like less interested. And
Mhm.
so we just kind of mutually stopped, which was actually great because it was like not that difficult for him. And then, I was pretty ready. So it just kind of like naturally happened, which was great because I think sometimes it can be quite hard to
Oh
stop.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Were you able to sleep more? Like or was he already sleeping through the night at that point?
He did a really good job of sleeping through the night, but that's one thing that we were just so lucky with. He started sleeping through the night pretty early on and just didn't struggle that much with sleep. Here and there, obviously, like he's a baby, so there are moments, but I think like he wasn't the worst sleeper, and we were somewhere in the middle. So
Sure.
I think in general, also it's interesting, and I talked to my husband about this a lot. Like we're pretty used to like not getting good sleep with what we do.
That makes sense.
Where we kind of like you go on trips, you're traveling, you're dealing with jet lag, then you're like in the mountains and you're getting up at 2 in the morning to go climb something, and you do really long stretches of like low sleep. And so in a way, I felt like what I had done for like my whole life was a little bit of training and preparation for having a kid, because you kind of like you kind of like learn how to operate on low sleep. And I think that that definitely like helped helped a bit in the first year.
Oh, for sure. So once you got your energy back, what was the process like for you to feel like totally back to you and the climbing shape you wanted to be in and all that?
I had been training all year for like while I was breastfeeding with a baby, and I just wasn't like performing that well. And I was really frustrated by it. But then as soon as I quit breastfeeding, it was like all the training I had done during that year kind of like caught up, and I immediately felt quite good, and if climbing felt really good. And so I really felt it was only about 2 months, I would say, and then I felt kind of back to where I was at before. And I think like for some people that can feel very frustrating, but I think, as an elite athlete, you're kind of used to going through these cycles, and you're used to having these ups and downs and these rest periods and all this
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
So you do learn to be a bit patient with it. And then we also deal with injuries, and
Right.
there's a lot that you kind of like deal with, a lot of setbacks. And so for me, I did, I was really proud of the effort that I put in despite not feeling my best. And then I felt like it all kind of started to benefit me about a year later, and then I started climbing well again, and I was really happy and proud of that.
That's amazing. So throughout that, I know we touched on it a little bit before, but throughout at least the postpartum period, were you getting a lot of unsolicited advice or people telling you things that you should and shouldn't do and all of
Oh my
that? Like,
gosh,
what was that like?
yes. It was really hard at the very beginning, because I had, and I think it's important to recognize that like everyone has a different journey. Like
Yeah.
everybody is different. And it can be really easy to kind of compare yourself to other people and like
Mm.
what they're doing and where they're at in their postpartum, especially as an athlete. It's just hard. But I had like a fairly uncomplicated birth, and I started climbing like 2 weeks after I had Arrow, our son. And I started skiing pretty soon after. And then I just started getting all of these, yeah, unsolicited judgment. Like, you
Mhm.
shouldn't be doing that. Like, like you're kind of feeding into the culture of having to bounce back. And it was just kind of like, I'm actually just doing my like what feels good to me. And I recognize that not everybody can do that, but I did climb throughout my whole pregnancy. And
Mhm.
so it was a little bit hard just kind of when you're dealing with a newborn and everything, to have people like telling you that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, and you're gonna like make it harder for everybody else. And it was just it was an interesting
Jeez.
time, because it was like people telling me that I shouldn't be climbing because it was setting a bad example for other women. And I was just like, why? It was, everybody is different. Like,
Right.
can we not accept that everybody has a different journey? And like, this is what feels good to me. And
Mhm.
I think it came from like a place of insecurity, and a place of like comparison, like people comparing themselves to me, and
Mhm.
thinking that it was maybe setting a bad example, or something like that. But so that was just like it was just hard to be, because I didn't expect it. Like I didn't expect people to be hating on me for
Right.
doing what I've always done.
For sure. I mean, you're not just talking about just like, a tight knit friend circle. You like these are people that
Yeah.
you don't even know.
Yeah, well, it's people, yeah, it's like people that I sort of know, but also, yeah, people that I didn't know. And yeah, I just think, and I also think I have some empathy for that, because there are a lot of like female professional athletes now who have children who do come back postpartum, and they can come back fairly quickly, and come back to their sport, probably not at the same level that they were at before,
Mhm.
but people see that, and it becomes like a comparison, and
Yeah.
they start to think that there's like a standard, or like that they should be doing that as well. and
Mhm.
and that's not what's being said.
Mm.
I think you have to recognize like my journey is different from someone else's journey. Like being a professional rock climber for 30 years and climbing throughout my pregnancy, like coming back to climbing after 2 weeks just isn't, it's just not abnormal for me. It's not like pushing it's something that feels really good for me, but that's not how it has to be for everybody. And so I do have a little bit of empathy that like maybe it was perceived like that, like I was setting an unfair or like, yeah, setting a standard for women that like is unrealistic, I think was kind of like the criticism.
Well, I think you're being generous. That's very kind of you to be able to have that perspective because it doesn't sound like everybody gave you that same kind of compassion and understanding. I mean, it's hard to be in the public eye in the way that you are, and there's like tons of opinions being thrown at you
Yeah,
all the
I've
time.
had to, yes. And I think, I think maybe now we're all starting to kind of figure out a little bit that like it's not great to just be on our devices, like scrolling. The algorithm can kind of feed into your anxiety a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely did for me going, like especially that first year having a kid, I just
Yeah.
would get like the craziest things fed to me about like, basically worst case scenarios all the time. So I've had to like cut back on my social media intake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been really helpful. It's been like really healthy. I feel like I live in the real world more so than I used to. And it's been awesome. And especially like with my film coming out and stuff, of course, there's going to be like, just like things that are hurtful said and just people like to criticize people, especially people who are in the public eye. And so I've just kind of learned to, I just don't, I just am not on it as much. And that's been so great for me. It's
Right.
been so great for like my anxiety. And yeah, like even I fall into the trap of comparison as well. And I just think everyone needs to kind of temper their their use of social media and their
Yeah.
consumption of it to an extent, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious too, along your journey, are there any parallels for you between your, I don't know how to say it, but like maybe the mentality or something like that with climbing and with motherhood? Like, do you see any parallels for yourself in the journeys and in the process of doing these things?
Yes, I see so many parallels.
Mm.
I mean, I think the first one is it's never going to be perfect.
Mm.
Like in climbing, my training is never going to be perfect. My execution is never going to be perfect as much as I would love for it to be. It's just it's just not how life is. But I think I've kind of shifted my brain and I apply it to parenthood as well. Like it's not going to be perfect. I'm not going to always nail it. I'm not going to always, like we were talking about earlier, like I can't read my son's mind right now. He's 2.5 years old. Like the meltdowns happen and I might not always handle it the best way, but I do my best. And it's the same in climbing. I've kind of shifted my perspective a bit on how I approach like my climbing and parenthood in that like what I try to use the mindset of like what I'm doing is enough. Like it's my best and therefore it's enough.
Nice.
And if I don't get the best night's sleep, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to like still that I'm not going to be able to still go out and try my best at being a mom and at climbing. My motto is sort of just to like keep trying and then like trust myself. So like trust when I need breaks, trust when I need to take a step back, trust when I need to like go shut myself in the bathroom and take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
So I think that's helped me a lot is like the letting go of perfection in both sides, like in my climbing and athletic career and then in with parenthood. Like you're just not going to get all the things done. You're not going to be able to like
Right.
do all the laundry and clean everything and like take the car in and get a training session. You're just not, it's just not going to happen. And so like letting go of that has helped me a lot because, you know, really what's the outcome? Like you don't get everything done. That's it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Not that.
And then I think with climbing, as climbers, we're quite good at failure. I think a lot of people don't recognize that like climbing, 99% of what we do is we don't do the thing. We don't succeed.
Mm.
We're just constantly trying to figure out how to do the thing. And then once we do it, we just find a new thing to fail at. And I think that's been a really formative process for me. It's helped my perspective on life a lot. It's all about the struggle. And, if you're not enjoying that struggle, then I think you need to kind of reflect a bit, because that's where all the good stuff happens. That's where the good parts are, is when you're kind of like in the space of failure and trying to figure it out and trying to get to the end. And then you get to the end and there's a new failure to kind of explore. And I really love that about climbing. I really love it. And I've been trying hard to kind of incorporate that into my motherhood journey as well. I think it's super valuable.
It really is. And I mean, just speaking to that perfection, I mean, a lot of the moms that I meet with who come in for therapy are dealing with that perfection, that like not only that they might be feeling themselves internally, but the pressure from the external world or whatever, not wanting to like mess their kid up or quote unquote, like that kind of stuff. Just there's so much pressure. And this idea, the feeling that failure is okay, I wish that people could feel that it is okay. And it was one of the key takeaways I got from Girl Climber too. I mean, it's the failure is talked about, a good amount in the film.
Yeah. And I think that's why people relate to the film so well, because there are other climbing films out there, but they're kind of like, and they're great films, no doubt, but they kind of like elevate these athletes and put them on this like superhero level where you don't really see the struggle as much, and you don't see the vulnerability, and you don't see the failure. And I think when people watch Girl Climber, they get to see the like a very visceral failure. Like they get to feel it and experience it, and it is very vulnerable. And I think a lot of people see that and they're like, oh wow, like I understand what that feels like I get it, even though I'm not on the side of a cliff 2,000 feet off the ground. Like I know what that feels like. And I really appreciate that about how the story is told, because it is honest, it is like raw, and it is true, and it's something that everybody goes through, like whether it's like climbing or some sport or career or motherhood or parenthood, whatever it is, a relationship. Like you kind of we all go through failure in that way. And I think it's really interesting to talk about it and share it.
Are people telling you that they are resonating with that failure part, or that wanting to be okay with failure?
Yeah, that's kind of a lot of the feedback that I've gotten about the film is just that vulnerability piece, and the way that I express myself during failure and how I deal with failure is relatable and inspiring, and people just really like that it's told and that it's out there and that it does feel very honest, because it is.
Yeah.
It was just an honest process that I was going through.
Yeah, that was striking to me, because to your point, I don't often see the what you call it, that like sort of the arc of going from like where you feel like you cannot go on, to pushing through that and continuing. Sometimes those parts of those stories are left out, or they're not told in full. And of course, we didn't see every moment of your waking life over those years in the film, but I I was I was really glad to see the real, like the true experience that it seemed like you had.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it really was. It was real. And I think part of that is because the people who were there were just close friends of mine who I trusted so much. And I'm
Yeah.
just used to having them there with me. And my friend who was holding the camera was one of my closest friends. And also, there's a little bit of like, while this was going on, I wasn't like, oh man, this footage is going to be on an IMAX screen in 5 years. Like nobody thinks that, you know?
Right.
And like, I knew it
Bigger
was
than
my,
life. Yeah.
yeah, I knew it was my friend's dream to like make a feature doc out of the film, but like we all have dreams. We all have many dreams. A lot of them don't often work out. So
Right.
it just wasn't at the forefront of my mind. So that really was just me being me. And I think that people can feel that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I felt it. It was really powerful. And just is, I don't know if it's because you are a woman that it was able to, like, the story was able to be told in a more vulnerable way, that we were able to get to see some of those softer parts.
Yeah, I do think it's partially because I'm a woman, and I think it's a bit easier for me to be vulnerable and express those emotions.
Mhm.
And I think, in our society, those emotions can kind of be perceived as weakness in some ways, and I think the film does a really nice job of revealing it as a strength.
Yes.
And I just hope that, like, men and women can have some takeaways from that. Like, I don't think it's as accepted for a man
Mhm.
to be, like, crying up there and expressing emotions
Right.
in the same way, and I think that I'm fortunate for that. Like, it's
Mhm.
definitely more accepted for me to be able to, like, share those feelings very openly, and I kind of hope that that's changing in a way, and that we can see that, like, expressing your emotions and kind of, like, feeling them and validating them can be seen as something that can make us stronger
For
versus make
sure.
us weaker.
For sure. I mean, as I was watching it, I was thinking of my kids and wanting them to see it too. My daughter has aspirations for soccer, and my son has his aspirations. He's also in soccer and stuff like that. And the the thinking about kids seeing it too and being able to see what's possible and that failure is okay is also just such an important lesson early on in life, outside of, adults being able to be like, oh yeah, I can fail and it's okay.
Yeah.
There's just wide ranging, I guess, application for adults and kids to see that it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's just I do feel lucky because climbing is so much about failure. It's something I learned so early on. I think it's such a great sport for kids in that way because, like, all we do is fall. All we do
Mhm,
is fall down
mhm.
and then get back up. Like, that's all it is. And I just love that about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have very little exposure to climbing, but I knew that climbing was becoming a more popular thing. We have a climbing gym in my town here. When we were invited to a birthday party for have like a climbing birthday party, like this is super cool. Kids are getting to like learn a little bit of bouldering and be have
Yeah.
the go up on the wall and learn that in a fun environment and see other people doing that too. Like it's really, I think, up and coming even more and more.
Oh, yeah, it is exploding in popularity. It is so big now. Basically every urban center has multiple climbing gyms.
Hmm.
And it's a very accessible way for people to be introduced to the sport because you don't have to live anywhere near mountains or cliffs in order to experience it and feel it. And it is like a very empowering thing. And I think it teaches you so much about struggle and failure and
Hmm.
confidence. And yeah, I just think it's such a great sport.
For sure. And so for you, I mean, what do you want other moms to know and feel? Like moms who are elite athletes, or even if not necessarily this is their full-time job, but they are athletes in addition to whatever else they do, in the day-to-day, uh, who want to, have kids or maintain their level of activity.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's quite a bit that I'd like to share.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
all of it.
I think one of the most important things that I learned was when I got pregnant, I was so afraid of how it would change me.
Mm,
Like, I was just so convinced that I was gonna keep doing what I did at the level that I did with the level of risk. I was gonna keep going on trips. I wasn't gonna let it affect who I was. I had this idea that I was gonna, like, be a mom and just be who I was before, and I was gonna get after it and do the same things, and then I had my son, and everything that I was afraid of happened. Like,
mm,
we didn't talk about this as much, but I was, like, terrified to climb
mm,
on, like, really to be really high off the ground. I was really afraid of exposure. I was really afraid of climbing in Yosemite, climbing on El Cap, this place that I like built my career. I still haven't been back to El Cap. I was just so, and I really like before I had my son, I was like, I'm going to go back to Yosemite. I'm going to go back to El Cap. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to do all these routes. I'm going to go up there. And I just was so convinced that I wasn't going to let it change me. And I was so afraid that it would. And then it did.
Mm.
And strangely, and it was quite hard for me to accept, but I think I was really okay with the change. Like I was afraid that I would change and I did change, but it's almost been like very liberating. Like, oh, okay, this thing that I was so afraid of happening, it happened and I'm still okay.
Right.
Like I still love climbing. I still love having big goals and challenging myself, but I'm different than I was before and I'm really content with it and I'm really at peace with it and I'm really like appreciative of the transition. So I think there's a lesson there in that like you can't say that like having a kid or becoming a mother isn't going to change you. Like
Right.
that's not even the point. Like if you don't want to do this like massive life transition like so that it will change you, then why are you doing it? You know, like you want it to change you. And I think you'd be surprised at how refreshing that change can feel and how like something that you're so afraid of happening when it actually happens, it's like you can discover so many interesting things about yourself, so many beautiful things about yourself. So I think that's kind of like the first one is that like you will change, your life will change, what you prioritize changes, you know, what you're afraid of changes, your level of risk changes. But you'd be surprised at how content you can be with that once you kind of like open yourself up to it. I was pretty resistant to it for a while. I was pretty hard on myself. But once I kind of accepted it, I've felt really balanced and at peace with it, and that's been amazing. So it really has taught me so much. And in a lot of ways, I think I'm much stronger than I was before. I'm actually like, you know, I climbed the same level that I did even when I was like 18 years old, and that's been really, it's been a cool thing that I'm really proud of. But I think it's because I've been able to let go a lot of a lot of things that I kind of held on to when I was younger, a lot of expectations, a lot of judgment, a lot of like aspirations to be perfect. And now I just have a bit more of a well-rounded perspective on it. And I think I appreciate climbing so much more than I used to.
Super cool.
Yeah,
Unexpected.
it is. It's been unexpected and it's been awesome. And then I think I'd really emphasize the fact that everybody has a different journey. Like everybody's journey is different and the challenges are different. The things that are easy are different versus the things that are hard. And like, I think kind of recognizing that whatever your journey is, it's enough and it's your journey. And that's what it's meant to be is like a really important thing to recognize.
Beautiful. I mean, these are massive life lessons. Those are really, huge, huge. And I really appreciate you speaking to that part about the fear of how it would change you. I think even people who are not necessarily elite athletes can relate to that on their own level for their own life
Totally.
and
For
whatever
sure.
their fear is about how it'll change them. That there's a possibility that it won't be all bad or that you can embrace something different or learn something new about yourself is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's been. And obviously like these lessons, I'm having to relearn them every day. So like I say them like I'm like really nailing it. But I think it's important to recognize like I oftentimes feel like I'm not nailing it or not accepting them, but these are things that I really believe and I'm, I'm working on it.
I mean, right. I think that word you use, belief, like if that's at your core, like, if that's what is keeping you grounded in those moments where it's super hard and you have a toddler screaming and you're like, I don't know what to
Yeah.
do here. And you're okay at your core with not knowing and with feeling and figuring it out as you go. It's so much easier than feeling like you have to know exactly what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there are days when I'm, like, so lost and so overwhelmed, but I think at the core, it's like, I know that I'm okay. I know that I'm doing my
Yeah,
best, and so then it's okay to have the hard days, basically.
for sure. Yeah, some days are kind of easy-ish, maybe,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
some
Some days it's like a complete meltdown disaster.
right. Right, and that's him and you.
Yeah. It's all of us.
Everybody's melting down.
Everybody.
For sure. For sure. And yeah, to your point, like this is a process. And I find that, as kids develop and they go through their changes, we're having to learn all kinds of new stuff. So yeah, you don't like, not to be too much of a pun, you don't get to some mountaintop and then you're done.
No.
Like you have to keep at it, and they change and you change and everybody's shifting together. And there is a lot of opportunity for that to be a beautiful experience in total, but that doesn't mean that it's not hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's all exactly. It's just like climbing. Like you accomplish one thing and then you just like immediately move on to the next thing. Because what else would you do?
Right, right. But I imagine then it's hard to sometimes fully just be like, whoa, I just did that, when you're like on to the
Absolutely.
next.
It's a really good point, and it's something that I do struggle with is like the sitting in the like basking in the success. Like I that's something I'm quite bad at. And I even did it after my like LCAP Golden Gate ascent. It was like, okay, like what do I do now? And I think a lot of athletes go through that. There's like this moment, this period of time where you're like unmotivated and there's like melancholy and there's a little depression and you're
Mhm.
kind of like lost. And I
Yeah,
definitely went through that.
that makes sense.
It was really hard because I was like, I should be like, there's a lot of shoulds. Like, I
Mhm.
should be on top of the world. I should feel really good. I should be so proud. But like, for some reason, I just wasn't. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to
Mhm.
do with myself.
Gosh,
So that was a
that makes
hard,
so much sense.
yeah.
To have
Yeah.
this singular, not singular, but big focus for so many years, and then it's just,
Then you're like,
what
well, that's
now?
it. Okay. We're going to drive home.
Right. Right. You just go back
And I'm
to
really,
normal.
yeah, you're like, I'm really tired. And then like the tiredness just like lasts a while and you can't, yeah, you just couldn't get out of it.
Sure. I mean,
So.
especially for that, it was an incredible amount of effort and energy, and I assume no sleep over under 24 hours.
Yeah, it was yeah, exactly. It was a lot of lead up time, many years of preparation, and then, like, in leading up to the effort that was eventually successful, that was, like, months and weeks of, like, working on the route, trying, and then you kind of, like, have this intense rest period where
Mm.
you're trying to rest before the attempt, and then you have an attempt, and the attempt lasts 21 hours, and, you know, you get down and you're super happy, and then, like, that adrenaline sort of wears off. And then you're just left with, like, sheer exhaustion, but also kind of emptiness, and it was really hard. I remember, like, in the months after that, like, I remember, like, sitting at the a climbing area at a climbing wall just, like, in tears because I was like, I don't wanna climb. Like, what do I
Right.
do? I don't wanna climb anymore.
Right.
What am I gonna do now?
Right. Right.
Eventually, I wanted to climb again. I
Yeah.
just needed to give myself that space, but, like, I kinda
Sure.
didn't want to because I didn't know what to do.
That makes so much sense. And I mean, people on the outside, especially on social media, to go back to that, are never going to fully know what I'm talking about the film and this goal in particular, what you went through to get there, what it is like for you. People are going to have projections about what they think and ideas about what you should have done or shouldn't have done. But just to even understand a little bit more of the nuance of what you experienced gives a full, put to me anyways, gives a full picture of there are a lot of ups and downs with this. There are a lot of
Yeah.
things you have to push through and deal with the failure and deal with the exhaustion and feeling that lost feeling. It's I'm on the outside, it'd be easy to think like, oh, she's just off on another adventure and like, you know, doing all
Yeah.
this stuff. But there's all this time in between and all of the things you have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely, and it took a while for me to kind of, like, accept that, I was also, I mean, there's just so many parallels with like parenthood and stuff too. It's just like, yeah, just like the acceptance of like being kind of spent, but still trying to do things, still trying to have goals and like not sure where, feeling a little lost, like it, giving myself, and I'm also just quite bad at like giving myself rest periods because I do feel like I just want to always be productive and I always want to be working towards something. But oftentimes, like working towards something requires some level of like rest and recovery.
Sure.
And I think that's the space that I struggle with most is that kind of like, oh, what, like I'm supposed to be resting because that's like rejuvenating and helpful, but actually I don't really know what to do. So I might as well just like go start training again, even though I'm not ready. I think that's
Sure.
a tricky place for me.
Well, it must be hard if it's part of your identity too.
Yeah.
Like not like who am I without climbing, but if if that, or I don't know, maybe that is
But I mean, it is
part.
a bit of like, who am I without
Oh,
climbing?
yeah.
Like, yeah, I think when you dedicate your life to something and
Sure.
you dedicate your life to identifying as a certain thing and you're kind of committed to it, it does become hard. And I think, parenthood has helped. It's like, well, I'm also a mom and I'm a wife and I'm a friend and I do other things.
Yeah.
But I spend most of my time climbing and dedicated to that and telling my story about climbing. So even when I'm not climbing, I'm kind of talking about climbing.
Right, for sure. Yeah, especially right now as the film's coming out. But
Yeah.
I think there's like something to be said too about that parallel, like identifying as a mom, or sometimes like not being able to see yourself as more than just one role. But at least a lot of moms can fall into that. To be so involved in the task and the day-to-day of being a parent can really kind of suck you into that's your identity too.
Totally. Yeah. And then I think there's also the flip side of things. Like we have a nanny, and oftentimes like when our nanny is with our son, I'm like, oh, I have to be like, do it because I'm not with him. I have this like pressure to like, oh, you better be doing something valuable and productive if you're not going to be with your kid. It's like,
Oh, that's so real. Yep.
if you have childcare, like you better be getting after it. Which is like,
Right.
it's just so hard because
Right.
yeah, I struggle with that balance in a way, I think.
For sure. You can't just go like lay on the beach or
No,
like,
I don't
yeah.
know if I could, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a mental shift for sure. Oh
Mhm.
man. Well, this conversation with you has been just amazing and delightful, and I'm happy to have learned from you, even just in our conversation right now, but through the film as well. I'm just grateful that you're putting this out into the world and being real, and that helps all of us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was a super fun conversation. So I
Great.
learned a lot as well.
Thank you so much. And I'm really, really excited for everyone to see Girl Climber. It's a phenomenal film.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Emily, for coming on and sharing your experience. If you'd like to follow Emily, go to Instagram at Emily Harrington. And definitely check out Girl Climber. You can find out more about where it's playing if you go to monkeywrenchfilms.com/Girl Climber. And we'll have those links in our show notes. Please do share this episode far and wide. I think it is so important to hear stories like Emily's, and especially to hear her message that failure is okay and that we are all on our individual journeys and that all of that is okay. You can share this episode from your favorite listening platform, or you can go to YouTube at Mom and Mine's channel and share and watch from there. I thank you so much for being with us. Until next time.